thing here then is we want to start talking about what trigonometry is before we necessarily say introduction to trig ratios, trig for short for trigonometry. Trigonometry has to do with triangles, right angle triangles. You know what a right angle is, right? Here in my hand I'm holding a couple different right angles. I don't know if you've seen those things you use in construction or whatever, rafters, squares, things to make right angles. If I was going to draw a right angle triangle on here, number one, there's a little triangle tool here that I will use. Can I make a right angle triangle with this thing by the looks of it here? Maybe we'll get rid of that because I want it to be more in the middle. Can I make a right angle triangle with this? Does it look like? Can't make a right. Well, actually, I can make one just by sheer coincidence. I could make one type of right angle triangle. How could I make? I think I could almost make this into a right angle triangle if I stop about there, right? Does that make sense? Is that a right triangle? It isn't in the way you think of a right triangle, but that looks sort of like a right angle. So you could sort of make a right angle triangle with it. But when you think about a right angle triangle, you think about it as the way that it's sort of, that one was almost like upside down. A right angle triangle that looks like, no, this is going to look not great, but because I'm not using a ruler, but that's a right angle triangle, right? Trigonometry has to do with right angle triangles and relationships between sides and angles in right angle triangles. How many sides, how many angles does a triangle have? Triangle, right? It's called a triangle because it's three angles. It's actually three sides as well. There are, I know I'm telling you, so this, if you take your notes home and show somebody, they're going to think, what is this, math 5? Math grade 5? You're learning about triangles have three sides and three angles. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but that's a good starting point, right? Three sides and three angles for a total of 6, I'm going to call them things, okay? Very technical math language, things, 6 things, right? There's 6 different things, 3 angles, 3 sides. Trigonometry, you look at the relationships between all of those things. You look at the relationships between sides and angles, okay? What the first thing you have to recognize to understand why trigonometry works is, and you might appreciate this more after we've done some with it, but if I was to take this triangle and start to change if I do this, which ones of those things that I'm calling things, which ones of those things are changing? Are they all changing? Are some of them changing? Or none of them changing? The sides are changing. Are the angles changing? The angles are not changing. And that's the key to trigonometry, is the angles are not changing. No matter how big or small I make this, the angles are not changing. This angle is the same. Whatever this angle is here, I don't know what it is, but whatever that angle is, even when I enlarge it that way proportionally, if I was to do this, now what's happening? The angle's changing. So if I have a triangle with that specific angle, let's just say for the sake of argument this is 31 degrees because 31 happens to be my favorite number. But let's say that's 31 degrees. And if I change that, it's still 31 degrees. If I make any size triangle with a 31 degree angle, there's going to be a certain relationship between the sides. Right? Like if I take the triangle like that, and this was, let's say that this is 10, I have no idea what units, 10 inches on the screen. And let's say that this is roughly, I don't know, let's just make it up, but 20 inches. It's not going to be exact, but I'm making it up because that would mean it's a different angle than 31. But let's say I was doing that. Let's make it, because actually 30 is probably closer to what it is. Let's pretend we don't know what the angle is. How about that? Just to be safe. If I was to make this bigger now, okay, I'm going to use the technology to its fullest here and hopefully successfully copy and paste my triangle. So now I'm going to say I'm going to get rid of the 10 and the 20 because I'm going to make the thing bigger. If I enlarge this, just like you would on a photocopier or something, right, a scanner, if I enlarge this now, let's say I make this twice as big so that this is better. Let's make it 3 times as big so we don't get mixed up with the numbers. Let's say we make that 3 times as big, and this was 30. What's that side? 60. So we all get the idea of similar triangles, right? Those two triangles are similar triangles. If that's times 3, that's times 3. All trigonometry is using that and saying, if you know what this angle is, I know what the ratio should be, right? If this is a 1 to 2 ratio here for a particular angle, trigonometry is just saying, what if we just go from the angle and say, if we know what that angle is, we can figure out what that ratio is. So when we talk about trig ratios, we're talking about ratios of sides, right? Like this is for every 10, there's 20. For every 1, there would be 2, right? If I made it really small. For every 30, there, 30, 60. If you know the angle, your magical calculator can tell you what the ratio is going to be. That's what trigonometry is. Okay, so that's what we're starting to look at. Relationships between angles and sides, or ratios between sides. So the first section here talks about introduction to trig ratios. That's what we're talking about ratios. Ratios of two sides of a triangle. There's lots we have to do to start trigonometry. In these tutorials or, sections here, the first thing is I would like to tell you what it is you're supposed to learn. So that's what this is. Focus on. You might have seen that before in some of the things you had last year. After this lesson, you should be able to, and there's 4 things there. So maybe at the beginning it doesn't mean much to you. Identify the hypotenuse. What is this? Opposite side? I don't know what this is. Right? The 3 basic trig ratios. It's not meant to make you feel intimidated because you don't know what it means. In some ways, it's good to come back to that after and see if you do know how to do that. We're not likely going to be able to tackle all of those today, but we can tackle some of them. This is set up so that for the most part you can start to work through it on your own. Okay? What is trigonometry? You can, as soon as I give you a textbook, you can do that, right? Here it's talking about ratios. You can discuss with somebody what the word ratio means, and you can write something down for that. When you get a textbook, you can see if you could find it in there. But to start with trigonometry, we need to talk about this. This is something that you are gonna work through. Most of this you're gonna work through independently, and then we're gonna take it up after a while. You have to actually read it as you go. Don't just try to ignore all the words that are there. They're to help you. And then when you get to here for today, I need to give you a protractor for this if you don't have one. I'm assuming you don't have one. You might have one, but I do have some you can borrow. But we will likely get partially into that, and then we'll have to see how we do. Okay? So while I am signing out textbooks to you, you are going to work through that. The first page where it says, write the meaning of these as you learn it during the activity. Don't try to sit down and do those now. Come back to them later and write something in your own words. It's better if you try and write them in your own words instead of just, when you get the textbook, copy them all out. Okay? Everybody clear on what you need to do right now? All right. Awesome. So I'm going to